We have a story here at Forbes.com by Kiona N. Smith entitled Everything We Know About the Isolated Sentinelese People of North Sentinel Island. Kiona Smith begins. The death of an American tourist who visited illegally the isolated North Sentinel Island drew the world's attention to the small island's reclusive inhabitants. They're one of the few mostly uncontacted groups left in the world, and they owe that isolation partly to geography. North Sentinel is a small island off the main shipping routes, surrounded by a shallow reef with no natural harbors. And a super chat from Zacchaeus Hundley, proclaiming it's lit, and featuring a bonfire. Thank you, Zach. Partly to protective laws enforced by the Indian government, and partly to their own fierce defense of their home and their privacy. But they're not entirely uncontacted over the last 200 years. Outsiders have visited the island several times, and it often ended badly for both sides. According to a 2011 effort of the census, and based on anthropologist estimates of how many people the island could support, there are probably somewhere between 80 and 150 people on North Sentinel Island, although it could be as many as 500 or as few as 15. The Sentinelese people are related to other indigenous groups of the Andaman Islands, a chain of islands in India's Bay of Bengal, but they've been isolated for long enough that other Andaman groups like the Anga and the Jarawa cannot understand their language. Based on a single visit to a Sentinelese village in 1967, we know they live in lean-to huts with slanted roofs. Pandit, I guess that's the name of the visitor, doesn't say yet. Pandit described a group of huts built facing one another, with a carefully tended fire outside each one. We know they built small, narrow outrigger canoes, which they maneuver with long poles in the relatively shallow, calm waters inside the reef. From those canoes, the Sentinelese fish and harvest crab. They're hunter-gatherers, and if their lifestyle is anything like that of related Andamanese peoples, the Andamanese. They probably live on fruits and tubers that grow wild on the island, eggs from seagulls or turtles, and small game like wild pigs or birds. They carry bows and arrows, as well as spears and knives, and unwelcome visitors have learned to respect their skill with the above weapons. Many of these tools and weapons are tipped with iron, which the Sentinelese probably find washed ashore and work to suit their needs. They weave mesh baskets, and they use wooden adzes tipped with iron. Salvage crews anchored near the island in the mid-90s described bonfires on the beach at night and the sounds of people singing. But so far, none of the Sentinelese language is known to outsiders. Anthropologists usually make a point to refer to people by the name they use for themselves, but no one outside North Sentinel Island actually knows what they call themselves, let alone how to greet them or ask their view of the world. What we know for sure is that they don't care much for company, and they've expressed that clearly without even a common language. One night in 1771, an East India Company vessel sailed past Sentinel Island and saw lights on the shore. But the ship was on a hydrographic survey mission and had no reason to stop. So the Sentinelese remained undisturbed for another century, almost, until an Indian merchant ship called the Nineveh ran aground the reef. 86 passengers and 20 crew managed to swim and splash their way to the beach. They huddled there for 3 days before the Sentinelese evidently decided the intruders had overstayed their welcome. A point they made with bows and iron-tipped arrows. Western history only records the Nineveh side of that encounter, but it's interesting to speculate on what might have been happening in the village behind the scenes. The Nineveh's passengers and crew responded with sticks and stones, and the two sides formed an uneasy détente until a Royal Navy vessel arrived to rescue the shipwrecked survivors. 100 years after the wreck of the Nineveh, a team of anthropologists led by Trinok Nath Pandit, working under the Indian government, landed on North Sentinel Island. Like Portman, they found only hastily abandoned huts. The people had fled so quickly, they left the fire still lit outside their homes. Pandit and his team left gifts, bolts of cloth, candy, and plastic buckets. But naval officers and Indian police accompanying Pandit also stole from the Sentinelese, taking bows, arrows, baskets, and other items from their unguarded homes, despite the protests of the anthropologists. Still not a great showing from the outside world.